Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. In this episode of the Flathead video, I will consider one of the most recent topics that have been of interest to me. We are going to look at some posts or some articles posted by NASA and its allies to the facts we are going to discuss today. I will also consider an experiment carried out by a YouTube channel by Steve Matthews of Teeth of the Lamb YouTube channel. He carried out an amazing moon phases experiment that you are going to see here. You use it to as part of our confirmation that space is full of water. So let's actually get started. Let me call up these posts. Now, as you will see here, look at this. NASA missions provide new insight into ocean walls in our solar system. Now, what does that mean? Into ocean walls in our solar system. That is to say, there is a likelihood or a tactical confirmation that space is full of water.
Presented by Science at NASA.
Now let's look at this. Two veteran NASA missions are providing new details about icy ocean-bearing moons of Jupiter and Saturn, further heightening the scientific interest of these and other ocean worlds in our solar system and beyond. The findings are presented in papers published Thursday by researchers with NASA's Cassini mission to Saturn and Hubble Space Telescope. Now, is that a tactical acceptance or a tactical confirmation that space is full of water? You may be a doubting Thomas and be feeling that flat earthers are flooding your timelines with this belief that space is full of water. Most of the space videos you have been watching are filmed in Hollywood studios or somewhere in swimming pools around the United States of America, and you think they are in space. They are actually in a swimming pool somewhere because no one has ever been to space. And NASA have even confirmed that, but that is not the subject of our discussion today. Now let's look at this also, another post here. Water everywhere in our solar system, but what does that mean for life? What does that mean for life? There was much excitement when NASA recently revealed new details about the oceans that lurk beneath the surface of Saturn's tiny moon Enceladus and Jupiter's Europa. Why the excitement? They have several times said that flat earthers are lying that space is full of water. So now it is traces as confirmed by most of their articles here that space is full of water. So why the excitement? That's not my point of concern actually. Now look at this article as well. The famous Eye of God nebula may actually be weeping tears of water. Weeping tears of water. This picture, as you can see here, this is the famous Eye of God nebula that it's presumed is weeping tears of water. And then where is the water coming from if space is not occupied majorly by water? Let's look at this. Is it something of interest? It is one of the most iconic celestial images in astronomy, the Eye Helix Nebula. Ironically, the incredible harsh conditions within this dying sun-like star are producing a molecular integral for the formation of water, a process that could be repeated across the cosmos. Tactically, if at all, I have never believed NASA. to be an agency that is for our own good. They are actually government's machinery to embezzle taxpayers' money. That's my view. All right. At this point, the image you are seeing here, or this screen you are seeing here, is a screen from a video posted by Steve Matthews. He titled it "Moon Phases Experiment, Flat Earth" by Steve Matthews. The YouTube channel, as you can see, is Teeth of the Lamb. Teeth of the Lamb, a very amazing image here. Avatar there, you can see there. Now let's look at this interesting experiment he carried out here, showing moon phases and how they, in my view, they support the fact that space is full of water. Now let's look at this. Let me not bore you with the preambles,
but maybe this will give us some ideas. This is what I think is happening, or something very, very similar. Good luck. I'm not saying this is the way it is, but this is the way I think it is.
This is my simulated moon phases.
The curve on this glass is way too concaved, but if it was less, it would work a lot better for showing the phases of the moon. Anyway, that's all I could find to use.
This goes on till about timestamp 6:30. So if you want to skip ahead to the nighttime sky, but I wanted to put all these clips in here in case somebody wants to cut them out and use them for another video. So I put all of it down. But yeah, timestamp 6:30 is the nighttime sky.
The curve on this glass is way too concaved, but if it was less, it would work a lot better for showing the phases of the moon. Anyway, that's all I could find to use.
Alright, what you have just seen is an experiment or a demonstration showing phases of the moon. And as you could see in the video there, you will discover that as his simulated moon enters the waters, it forms a concave shape of the moon, which we normally see in the sky, both daytime sky and nighttime sky. So I believe, with the evidence of the articles posted by NASA and others stating that the universe is and space is full of water. So with this experiment and combined with the articles we've displayed earlier, It is safe to conclude that space is full of water, and to also conclude that you have been thoroughly deceived and indoctrinated to believe all that NASA have been saying to you. And at this point, with a great awakening happening all over the world, it is your fault if you are still left in darkness, and or if you are still left asleep. So I expect all of you who have the opportunity to watch this video to be well awake and consider to research flat earth. Carry out research. Don't rely only on YouTube videos that we are posting, even though that's a very good source of information for you about flat earth. But you can on your own also research other sites, other areas. There are books written by most flat earthers and other researchers. You can equally consult some of those books. There are a lot of questions to be answered, but no answers. So we are not going to dive into that today. We'll look at some of those topics in subsequent videos we are going to post. But for today, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. Please consider visiting Moon Phases Experiment Teeth of the Lamb YouTube channel. You are going to see the link is in my description. Please consider visiting his channel to see most of other amazing videos he has there. Thank you guys for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share with your friends and family on social media and elsewhere. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you are visiting for the first time. See you in the next video. Thank you guys. Peace be unto you and your family.
Of years. This may have been the reason why you haven't accepted the flat earth. After this video, your view will change. Without much ado, let's get started. When it comes to the Book of Enoch, I know many want to dispute whether or not we should consider it canon, or even a valid source for deriving, confirming and or elaborating on the canonized biblical truths. Many commentaries have been written giving the various perceived pros and cons of doing so. For me, I have no need to consider it scripture. However, I do value it primarily because the authors of scripture certainly did, even to the point of directly quoting from it, while under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. Concerning the seeming ambiguities of canonized scripture as it pertains to the issues being addressed here in this video, I like the way Robert Shadewald handles the Book of Enoch in his online article. Let me quote him directly here. Ambiguities in ancient documents can often be elucidated by consulting contemporary documents. The most important ancient document describing Hebrew cosmology is 1 Enoch, sometimes called the Ethiopic Book of Enoch, one of those long, disjointed, scissors and paste jobs beloved by ancient scribes. For a dozen or so centuries, European scholars knew 1 Enoch only from numerous passages preserved in the patristic literature. In 1773, the Scottish adventurer James Bruce found complete copies in Ethiopia. Numerous manuscripts of 1 Enoch have since been found in Ethiopian monasteries. Turn of the century scholars concluded that parts of the book are pre-Maccabean, and most, perhaps all, of it was composed by 100 BC Charles, 1913. These conclusions were largely vindicated when numerous fragments of 1 Enoch were found among the so-called Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. 1st Enoch is important for another reason. Unlike the canonical books of the Bible, which, in my view, were never meant to teach science, sections of 1 Enoch were intended to describe the natural world. The narrator sometimes sounds like a 2nd century BC Carl Sagan explaining the heavens and earth to the admiring masses. The Enochian cosmology is precisely the flat earth cosmology previously derived from the canonical books. Whether or not we consider the Book of Enoch to be scripture is irrelevant. If you at least accept it as having any measure of credibility as a contemporary biblical commentary, you'll see this concept of a flat, enclosed earth is described in even more detail by its writers, thus revealing how the ancient Hebrews viewed the heavens, earth, sun, moon and stars when they both wrote and read the canonized texts. For Enoch to have been so well preserved in multiple copies in the Dead Sea Scrolls and for authors such as Jude and later church fathers to quote directly from it, this shows us the book was held in high regard, at least well into the first few centuries AD. I contend it is still worthy of taking notice of in our day as well. Especially, when you consider the opening words of the book, 1 Enoch 1-1. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. 2. And he took up his parable and said, Enoch, a righteous man, whose eyes were opened by God, saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me, and from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one which is for to come. I believe we are that remote, future generation, that was to come and live in the day of tribulation. Enoch's view on the nature of the earth. 1 Enoch 18 verses 1. I saw the treasuries of all the winds, I saw how he had furnished with them the whole creation and the firm foundations of the earth. 2. And I saw the cornerstone of the earth, I saw the four winds which bear, the earth and, the firmament of the heaven. 3. And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven, and have their station between heaven and earth, these are the pillars of the heaven. 4. I saw the winds of heaven which turn and bring the circumference of the sun and all the stars to their setting. 5. I saw the winds on the earth carrying the clouds, I saw the paths of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of the heaven above. And I proceeded and saw a place which burns day and night, where there are 7 mountains of magnificent stones, 3 towards the east, and 3 towards the south. 7. And as for those towards the east, one was of colored stone, and one of pearl, and one of jacinth, and those towards the south of red stone. 8. But the middle one reached to heaven like the throne of God, of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was of sapphire. 9. And I saw a flaming fire. And beyond these mountains is a region the end of the great earth, there the heavens were completed. 11. And I saw a deep abyss, with columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw columns of fire fall, which were beyond measure alike towards the height and towards the depth. 12. And beyond that abyss I saw a place which had no firmament of the heaven above, and no firmly founded earth beneath it, there was no water upon it, and no birds, but it was a waste and horrible place. Is Job 26 verse 7, concerning the earth hanging on nothing, just a confirmation of what Enoch is saying here? Enoch described a place where there was nothing. Job describes the same. Job 26, verse 7 said, He stretched out the north over the empty place, and hanged the earth upon nothing. Enoch clearly describes the earth on a foundation, like so many other authors as seen above. But he also describes a place beyond the ends of the earth. A place of horrible nothingness. Whatever your view may be, it is clear, either one of these authors has borrowed from the other or they both were inspired by the same source. Enoch again describes this place. Now, let's look at this other excerpt from the same book of Enoch. 1 Enoch 21 verse 1. And I proceeded to where things were chaotic. 2. And I saw there something horrible, I saw neither a heaven above nor a firmly founded earth, but a place chaotic and horrible. 1 Enoch 23 verse 1. From thence I went to another place to the west of the ends of the earth. 1 Enoch 33 verse 1. And from thence I went to the ends of the earth and saw there great beasts, and each differed from the other, and, I saw, birds also differing in appearance and beauty and voice, the one differing from the other. Verse 2. And to the east of those beasts I saw the ends of the earth whereon the heaven rests, and the portals of the heaven open. Verse 3. And I saw how the stars of heaven come forth, and I counted the portals out of which they proceed, and wrote down all their outlets, of each individual star by itself, according to their number and their names, their courses and their positions, and their times and their months, as Uriel the holy angel who was with me showed me. Verse 4. He showed all things to me and wrote them down for me, also their names he wrote for me, and their laws and their companies. Enoch's view on the nature of the sun, moon and stars. Now we will examine the view of Enoch on the sun, the moon and the stars as contained in 1 Enoch chapter 72. Here we go. Enoch chapter 72, verse 1. The book of the courses of the luminaries of the heaven, the relations of each, according to their classes, their dominion and their seasons, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel, who was with me, who is their guide, showed me, and he showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity, till the new creation is accomplished which strith till eternity. Verse 2. And this is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary the sun has its rising in the eastern portals of the heaven, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven. Verse 3. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets and the moon rises and sets in these portals, and the leaders of the stars and those whom they lead, 6 in the east and 6 in the west, and all following each other in accurately corresponding order, also many windows to the right and left of these portals. Verse 4. And first there goes forth the great luminary, named the sun, and his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. Verse 5. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is so guided that he comes to the appropriate, lit, that, portal and shines in the face of the heaven. Verse 6. In this way he rises in the first month in the great portal, which is the fourth those 6 portals in the cast. Verse 7. And in that fourth portal from which the sun rises in the first month are 12 window openings, from which proceed a flame when they are opened in their season. Verse 8. When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that fourth portal 30 mornings in succession, and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west of the heaven. Verse 9. And during this period the day becomes daily longer and the night nightly shorter to the 30th morning. Verse 10. On that day the day is longer than the night by a 9th part, and the day amounts exactly to 10 parts and the night to 8 parts. Verse 11. And the sun rises from that fourth portal, and sets in the fourth and returns to the 5th portal of the east 30 mornings, and rises from it and sets in the 5th portal. Verse 12. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts and amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. Verse 13. And it returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal, and rises and sets in the 6th portal 1 and 30 mornings on account of its sign. Verse 14. On that day the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. Verse 15. And the sun mounts up to make the day shorter and the night longer, and the sun returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal, and rises from it and sets 30 mornings. Verse 16. And when 30 mornings are accomplished, the day decreases by exactly 1 part, and becomes 11 parts, and the night 7. Verse 17. And the sun goes forth from that 6th portal in the west, and goes to the east and rises in the 5th portal for 30 mornings, and sets in the west again in the 5th western portal. Verse 18. On that day the day decreases by 2 parts, and amounts to 10 parts and the night to 8 parts. Verse 19. And the sun goes forth from that 5th portal and sets in the 5th portal of the west, and rises in the 4th portal for 31 mornings on account of its sign, and sets in the west. Verse 20. On that day the day is equalized with the night, and becomes of equal length, and the night amounts to 9 parts and the day to 9 parts. Verse 21. And the sun rises from that portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east and rises 30 mornings in the 3rd portal and sets in the west in the 3rd portal. Verse 22. And on that day the night becomes longer than the day, and night becomes longer than night, and day shorter than day till the 30th morning, and the night amounts exactly to 10 parts and the day to 8 parts. Verse 23. And the sun rises from the 3rd portal and sets in the 3rd portal in the west and returns to the east, and for 30 mornings rises in the 2nd portal in the east, and in like manner sets in the 2nd portal in the west of the heaven. Verse 24. And on that day the night amounts to 11 parts and the day to 7 parts. Verse 25. And the sun rises on that day from that 2nd portal and sets in the west in the 2nd portal, and returns to the east into the 1st portal for 31 mornings, and sets in the 1st portal in the west of the heaven. Verse 26. And on that day the night becomes longer and amounts to the double of the day, and the night amounts exactly to 12 parts and the day to 6. Verse 27. And the sun has, therewith, traversed the divisions of his orbit and turns again on those divisions of his orbit, and enters that portal 30 mornings and sets also in the west opposite to it. Verse 28. And on that night has the night decreased in length by a 9th part, and the night has become 11 parts and the day 7 parts. Verse 29. And the sun has returned and entered into the 2nd portal in the east, and returns on those his divisions of his orbit for 30 mornings, rising and setting. Verse 30. And on that day the night decreases in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts and the day to 8. Verse 31. And on that day the sun rises from that portal, and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the 3rd portal for 31 mornings, and sets in the west of the heaven. Verse 32. On that day the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts, and the night is equal to the day and the year is exactly as to its days 364. Verse 33. And the length of the day and of the night, and the shortness of the day and of the night arise through the course of the sun. These distinctions are made, lit. They are separated. Verse 34. So it comes that its course becomes daily longer, and its course nightly shorter. Verse 35. And this is the law in the course of the sun, and his return as often as he returns 60 times and rises, that is the great luminary which is named the sun, forever and ever. Verse 36. And that which, thus, rises is the great luminary, and is so named according to its appearance, according as the Lord commanded. Verse 37. As he rises, so he sets and decreases not, and rests not, but runs day and night. and his light is sevenfold brighter than that of the moon, but as regards size they are both equal. Whether or not David ever read the Book of Enoch, he certainly seemed to have had a very similar view of the sun as a male, coming out of a chamber, or a portal. Psalms 19 verses 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shade his handiwork. 2. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night shadeth knowledge. 3. There is no speech nor language, where their voice is not heard. 4. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. 5. Which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. 6. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. We will continue this video with Enoch's view of the moon in my next video. Thank you for watching.
Here's the question, has science discovered God? Well, Einstein didn't believe it was possible, but Stephen Hawking said it might be the greatest scientific discovery of all time. So what discovery has baffled the greatest scientific minds the past century? And why has it caused them to rethink the origin of our universe? Well, new and more powerful telescopes have unlocked mysteries about our universe never before revealed, giving us amazing new scientific insight into the origin of life. Has science discovered God? But wait a minute, hasn't science proven we don't need God to explain the universe? What is it about this discovery that is so fundamentally different? And why has it stunned the scientific world? Well, this discovery, along with what molecular biologists have learned about the sophisticated coding within DNA, have many scientists now admitting that the universe and life itself appear to be part of a grand design. One cosmologist put it this way: many scientists, when they admit their views, incline toward the design argument. Surprisingly, many scientists who are now talking about God have no religious belief whatsoever. So what are these stunning discoveries that have scientists suddenly speaking of God? Well, there are three revolutionary discoveries from the fields of astronomy and molecular biology that really stand out. 1. The universe had a beginning. The universe is just right for life. 3. DNA coding reveals intelligence. The statements leading scientists have made about these discoveries may shock you. Let's take a look. The universe had a one-time beginning. Since the dawn of civilization, man is gazed in awe at the stars, wondering what they are and how they got there. Although on a clear night the unaided human eye can see only about 6,000 stars, Hubble and other powerful telescopes reveal there are a billion stars clustered in over 100 billion galaxies. In fact, our sun is like one grain of sand amidst the world's beaches. But prior to the 20th century, the majority of scientists believed our own Milky Way galaxy was the entire universe and that only about 100 million stars existed. All scientists in the past believed that our universe never had a beginning. They believed that mass, space and energy that compose our entire universe had always existed. But in the early 20th century, astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe is expanding. Rewinding the process mathematically, he calculated that everything in the universe, including matter, energy, space and even time itself, actually had a beginning. Well, shock waves hit the scientific community. Many scientists, including Einstein, reacted negatively. In what Einstein later called the biggest blunder of my life, he fudged the equations to avoid the implication that the universe had a beginning. Well, perhaps the most vocal adversarial. The idea that the universe had a beginning was the British astronomer Sir Frederick Hoyle, who sarcastically nicknamed the creation event a Big Bang. He stubbornly held to his steady-state theory that the universe had always existed. Well, so did Einstein and other scientists, until the evidence for a beginning became overwhelming. The logical conclusion was like the proverbial elephant in the room, namely, that something or someone beyond scientific investigation must have started it all. Then finally, in 1992, the COBE satellite experiments proved that the universe really did have a one-time beginning in an incredible flash of light and energy. Although some scientists called it the moment of creation, most preferred referring to it as the Big Bang. Astronomer Robert Jastrow tries to help us imagine how it all began. The picture suggests the explosion of a cosmic hydrogen bomb. The instant in which the cosmic bomb exploded marked the birth of the universe. So the conclusion is, everything in the universe came from nothing. Science is unable to tell us what or who caused the universe to begin, but some believe it clearly points to a creator. British theorist Edward Milne wrote a mathematical treatise on relativity which concluded by saying, as to the first cause of the universe in the context of expansion, that is left to the reader to insert. But our picture is incomplete without him. Another British scientist Edmund Whittaker attributed the beginning of our universe to divine will, constituting nature from nothingness. Many scientists were struck by the parallel of a one-time creation event from nothing with the biblical creation account in Genesis 1:1. Prior to this discovery, many scientists regard the biblical account of creation from nothing as unscientific. Although he called himself an agnostic, Robert Jastrow was compelled by the evidence to admit, now we see how the astronomical evidence leads to a biblical view of the origin of the world. Another similar statement came from agnostic George Smoot, the Nobel Prize-winning scientist in charge of the Kobe experiment. He put it like this, there is no doubt that a parallel exists between the Big Bang as an event and the Christian notion of creation from nothing. Scientists who used to scoff at the Bible's account of creation are now admitting that the biblical concept of creation from nothing has been right all along. Cosmologists who specialized in the study of the universe and its origins soon realized that a chance cosmic explosion could never bring about life any more than a nuclear bomb would unless it was precisely engineered to do so, and that meant the designer must have planned it. They began using words like super-intellect, creator, and even supreme being to describe this designer. Why? Is this because the universe is finely tuned for life? Physicists calculated that for life to exist, gravity and the other laws of physics that govern our universe needed to be intricately tuned just right, or our universe couldn't exist. For instance, did you know that if the expansion rate of the universe had been slightly weaker, gravity would have held all matter back into a big crunch? We're not talking about merely a 1 or 2% reduction in the universe's expansion rate. Stephen Hawking writes, if the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, the universe would have elapsed before it ever reached its present size. Well, on the flip side, if the expansion rate had been a mere fraction greater than it was, all galaxies, stars and planets could never have formed and we wouldn't be here. And for life to exist, the conditions in our solar system and our own planet also need to be just right. For example, we all realize that without an atmosphere of oxygen none of us would be able to breathe, and without oxygen, water couldn't exist. Without water there would be no rainfall for our crops. Other elements such as hydrogen, nitrogen, sodium, carbon, calcium and phosphorus are also essential for life, but that alone is not all that's needed for life to exist. The size, temperature, relative proximity and chemical makeup of our planet, sun and moon also need to be just right, and there are dozens of other conditions that needed to be exquisitely fine-tuned or we wouldn't be here to think about it. The scientists who believe in God may have expected such fine-tuning, but atheists and agnostics were unable to explain the remarkable quote-unquote coincidences. The theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, an agnostic, writes, the remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. It all brings us to one question: the universe accident or miracle? But couldn't this fine-tuning be attributed to chance? After all, odds makers know that even long shots can eventually win at the racetrack, and against heavy odds, lotteries are eventually won by someone. So what are the odds against a human life existing by chance from a random explosion in cosmic history? Well, for human life to be possible from a Big Bang utterly defies the laws of probability. One astronomer calculates the odds at less than 1 chance in a trillion. In other words, it would be far easier for a blindfolded person in one try to discover one specially marked grain of sand out of all the beaches of the world. Look at it this way, the odds of one random Big Bang producing life as we know it would be like one person winning over 1,000 consecutive Mega Million-dollar lotteries after purchasing only a single ticket for each. Not very likely really. Quite impossible unless it was fixed by someone behind the scenes, which is what everyone would think, and that is what many scientists are concluding: someone behind the scenes designed and created the universe. Well, this new understanding of how miraculous human life is in our universe led the agnostic astronomer George Greenstein to ask, is it possible that suddenly, without intending to, we've stumbled upon the scientific proof of the existence of a supreme being? However, as an agnostic, Greenstein maintains his faith in science rather than a creator to ultimately explain our origins. Robert Jastrow explains why some scientists are reluctant to accept the transcendent creator. He says there is a kind of religion in science. It is a religion of a person who believes there is order and harmony in the universe. This religious faith to scientists is violated by the discovery that the world had a beginning under conditions in which the known laws of physics are not valid and as a product of forces or circumstances we cannot discover. When that happens, the scientist has lost control. If you really examine the implications, he would be traumatized. Well, it's understandable why scientists like Greenstein and Hawking seek other explanations rather than attribute our finely tuned universe to a creator. Hawking speculates that other unseen and unprovable universes may exist, increasing the odds that one of them, like ours, is perfectly fine-tuned for life. However, since his proposal is speculative and outside of verification, it can hardly be called scientific, although he's also an agnostic. British astrophysicist Paul Davies dismisses Hawking's idea as too speculative. He writes, such a belief must rest on faith rather than observation. Although Hawking continues leading the charge to explore purely scientific explanations for our origins, other scientists, including many agnostics, have acknowledged what appears to be overwhelming evidence for a creator. Astronomer Frederick Hoyle wrote a common-sense interpretation of the facts. Suggests that the super-intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. Although Einstein wasn't religious and didn't believe in a personal God, he called the genius behind the universe and intelligence of such superiority that compared with it all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection. Atheist Christopher Hitchens, who spent much of his life writing and debating against the existence of God, was most perplexed by the fact that life couldn't exist if things were different by just 1 degree or 1 hair. Davis acknowledges, there is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming, but astronomy is not the only area where science has discovered evidence for design. There is another discovery: DNA, the language of life, as recent as 1953. Molecular biologists discovered intricately complex design in the microscopic world of DNA. This tiny molecule has been called the brains behind each cell in our body as well as every other living thing. Yet the more they discover about DNA, the more amazed they are at the brilliance behind it. Scientists who believe the material world is all that exists, like Richard Dawkins, argued DNA evolved by natural selection without a creator, yet even most ardent evolutionists admit that the origin of DNA's intricate complexity is unexplainable. The DNA's intricate complexity caused its co-discoverer Francis Crick to believe that it could never have originated on Earth naturally. Crick and evolutionists believe life is too complex to have originated on Earth and must have come from outer space. He wrote, an honest man armed with all the knowledge available to us now could only state that in some sense the origin of life appears at the moment to almost be a miracle. So many are the conditions which would have had to have been satisfied to get it going. The coding behind DNA reveals such intelligence that it staggers the imagination. A mere pinhead volume of DNA contains information equivalent to a stack of paperback books that would encircle the Earth 5,000 times, and DNA operates like a language with its own extremely complex software code. Microsoft founder Bill Gates says that the software of DNA is far more complex than any software we have ever developed. Richard Dawkins and other evolutionary biologists believe that all this complexity originated through natural selection. Yet as Crick, a Nobel Prize winner, remarked, natural selection could never have produced the first molecule. Many scientists believe that decoding within the DNA molecule points to an intelligence far exceeding what could have occurred by natural causes. In the early 21st century, noted atheist Anthony Flou's lifelong unbelief came to an abrupt end when he studied the remarkable intelligence behind DNA. Flou explains what changed his position. What I think the DNA material has done is to show that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinarily diverse elements together. The enormous complexity by which the results were achieved looked to me like the work of intelligence. It now seems to me that the finding of more than 50 years of DNA research have provided materials for a new and enormously powerful argument to design. Although Flou is not a Christian, he admitted that the software behind DNA is far too complex to have originated without a designer. All this scientific evidence leads us to honestly consider that life and the universe have the fingerprints of a creator. Are scientists now convinced that a creator has left his fingerprints on the universe? Although many scientists are still bent on squeezing God out of the universe, most recognize the religious implications of these new discoveries. In his book, The Grand Design, Stephen Hawking, who doesn't believe in a personal God, attempts to explain why the universe doesn't need God. Yet when faced with the evidence, even Hawking has also admitted there must be religious overtones, but I think most scientists prefer to shy away from the religious side of it. As an agnostic, world-renowned astronomer, Robert Jastrow had no Christian agenda behind his conclusions. However, he freely acknowledges the compelling case for a creator. He writes of the shock and despair experienced by scientists who thought they had squeezed God out of their world. These are his words for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason. The story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He's about to conquer the highest peak, and as he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. So, what if after all there is a creator? If there is a super-intelligent creator, the question arises, what is he like? Is he just some cosmic force like in Star Wars, or is he a personal being like us? Well, since we're personal and relational beings, wouldn't the one who created us also be personal and relational? Many scientists like Arthur Al-Shabaab, professor of physics at Stanford University and winner of the Nobel Prize in Physics, believed that these new discoveries provide compelling evidence for a personal God. He writes, "It seems to me that when confronted with the marvels of life in the universe, one must ask why and not just how. They're the only possible answers are religious. I find a need for God in the universe and in my own life. If God is personal, and since he has given us the ability to communicate, wouldn't we expect him to communicate with us and let us know why we are here?" As we've seen, science is unable to answer questions about God and the purpose for life. However, since the Bible was right about creation from nothing, might it also be trustworthy regarding God, life and purpose? That 2,000 years ago a man set foot on our planet who claimed to have the answer to life. Although his time on Earth was brief, his impact changed the world and is still felt today. His name is Jesus Christ. The eyewitnesses to Jesus Christ tell us that he continually demonstrated creative power over nature's laws. They tell us he was wise, humble and compassionate. He healed the lame, deaf and blind. He stopped raging storms instantly. It created food. Nation began, for it was through him that everything was made, with her spiritual or material seen or you. Then it was necessary for him to rise from the dead so that we too could have life after death. As the creator, Jesus certainly would have power over life and death, and those closest to him claimed they saw him alive after he died and was buried for 3 days. If they were wrong, then Christianity has been founded upon a lie, but if they were right, such a miracle would substantiate all Jesus said about God himself and us. But must we take the resurrection of Jesus Christ by faith alone, or is there solid historical evidence? Several skeptics began investigations into the historical record to prove the resurrection account false. What did they discover?